All right, so I've had a couple people in the Discord that have requested for me to go through Burp Suite, and there's a lot of videos that are out there. I'm sure that go through some of the same stuff that I'm going through. Hopefully I hit on some unique things or kind of some unique takes or anything. But anyway, I've got one more free night tonight before heading off on my trip. So I thought I'd go ahead and just do a brain dump. Basically, I'm going to open up Burp here on my Kali box. Go through getting it set up. We'll open it up and I just go through everything that I can think of, right? Every individual tool, look through every setting, anything that I can think of that I think is valuable information about Burp Suite, how to use it to do bug bounty hunting. We'll look at that today. We'll do some demos. And yeah, that's it. I think once I get back, what I'll do is do a live stream with a Q&A. So we'll let this go for a couple weeks, give people a chance to see it and learn a lot from it. And then we can do a live Q&A, and I can go into more specific use cases and questions that the community has about what I'm going to show here. So yeah, let's go ahead and get the screens flipped, and we'll dig into it. You can see on the screen here too the great upgrades that man, I can't talk tonight. It's been a long week. I'm not going to lie. It's been a long week, but I'm okay. You can see the upgrades that the Decrypt has done for everybody that's been in the server. If you haven't been in the Discord server, definitely recommend you join. We've got a great community there talking about building this framework out, sharing knowledge for bug bounty hunting, and supporting other people, answering questions, things like that. So yeah, if you haven't joined, link will be in the description. Definitely recommend that you go check it out. And yeah, we'd love to learn from you as well. But yeah, Decrypt has done a really great job. This is the latest. You can do a git pull and get this now, but it's not in the release. We're still doing a little bit of testing on some of the pieces, but you can see he's added this great drop-down menu here, as opposed to having all the buttons go across the top and you have to scroll, so much easier there. You can add an FQDN and delete it right there. You can also scan just a single domain now with this checkbox, which is phenomenal. So you can just come in and say, well, I just want to do flowcast.studio, or in this case, flowcast.app, and it will just scan that. If you want to do everything that's in this list here, you just uncheck that, and it will scan everything just like it used to with Wildfire. And then the other really awesome update that the Decrypt has put in here is the Burp Suite config file. You can actually just upload that now, and it will automatically populate the framework with the scope there. So you can see, for anybody that's not familiar, most bug bounty programs have these configuration files. So you can go to the page itself, go to scope, and on the top here it says download the Burp Suite configuration file. So if I go browse here and we'll hit Flowcast, open that up and add it, you'll see that it will have also added the additional one in there. Let's just do one more time. Doing the front HQ, which is another good program there. And we've got several other options there. So yeah, huge thank you to Decrypt for doing that. Phenomenal pull request here. We're gonna do a little bit of testing there, and that will definitely be in the next alpha update of the framework. But anyway, moving on from that, let's go ahead and dig into Burp Suite. Get rid of that there. Now for anybody who's completely new to Burp Suite, it's a web proxy that's designed for you to capture HTTP requests and then make changes in them. So, obviously for security testing, you can capture it in between the browser and the web server, and you can manipulate that. You can do testing to send requests over and over again. Burp Suite is really the main tool for web application security testing. It's really, there are competitors, OWASP's app, which is a free version of it and everything, but Burp Suite is really a critical tool for anybody who wants to do application security. So I think that's why we're looking through it here. And also it works with my framework, which is why people were asking about it. So to start, if you're on a new installation of Kali, it's not going to have the professional version installed. So if you come up here and just type Burp, you will only see this Burp Suite, which is the Community Edition. The Community Edition is great. It's free. It comes with Kali. It has a lot of the functionality that you need to do testing. I usually recommend starting here before moving to professional. But you can't do scanning. They have a tool we're going to look at a little bit, Intruder. They have that throttled, meaning it can't send requests very quickly, and that's really the purpose of the tool. So there's some limitations there, but you can still do the core things that you need to do, right? You can still use it as a proxy. You can still capture the request. You can resend the request, modify them very easily. All types of things like that. There's just a couple features that aren't in there. So, but when you are ready, and what I'm going to be showing today is the professional version here. You can download it by just going to PortSwigger. You'll log in, so you have to make an account, and then if you come down here to subscriptions, so you do have to purchase the tool. I believe it's $500 a year. It may have gone up. I'll find out here very shortly when they renew it. But so you just need to download your license key in the software itself, and that is just going to download. Here you can see that's the license, and you can also see the SH file. Now you'll need to use a chmod on this. It will be white there, so you'll just do chmod. You can see where I ran it before. A +X will allow you to run it, and then you can // to install it. And then when you go to open this up for the first time, it's going to be looking for this license. Now I'm obviously not gonna show you my license here, but it's very simple. It's just a text file. You load it in, and it'll go reach out and validate that is a valid license. So let's go ahead and get the tool opened up. It always does that with the UI in Kali. I've never been able to figure out why or how to fix it or if it's a problem. You see they're yelling at me too about my license, even though it's set to auto renew. Okay, so when you open Burp Suite up, the first box that you get here is deciding what type of a project that you're going to do. So temporary project, this is just means you're not going to save it. If you're just open the Proxy up or you just want to do some quick testing, just leave it on here. No Burp, the save files are called Burp files, but no Burp file is going to be saved there. They can be very large files, so I recommend, unless you're specifically planning on stopping and restarting. I do this a lot. I use these a lot, even on bug bounty programs. You can hop back in and kind of get back to where you were if you're not dug into something specifically. New project, right? So if we want to really have something that we're going to carry over multiple days, we expect to restart the machine. We don't want to lose the data. You can go in and just create a new one. So I'll just call this demo here. And then once I hit next, it will go and create that. Now your other option is to open an existing one, and you'll see these .burp files listed here if you do have any. Now this is a new installation, so I don't have any. But when you want to resume it, and actually we can show that in a bit, but you'll just click on this. You'll select the burp file that you want, and it will open it up. Fairly simple. So let's go ahead and hit next. The next is the project settings. This is configurations around the types of tech. We're going to see me set up a few things when we first get in there, but things like resource pools, any type of universal settings for the app itself are going to be configured here. Burp has project settings, and then it has user settings, and you can kind of imagine the project is going to be specific to this individual product or project file. And you can, set configurations to that. The user is going to be more like the user interface, etc. It's going to be more global. So you have the Burp defaults here. If you already have a saved project, then you can come down and just reopen it with the same project settings that you have already set there. Or you can do a configuration file, which is something that you can, basically you can take the project settings from one file there and export them into one of these configuration files if you like the way you have Burp set up, and you can use that again every time you open a new one. And then you see a couple options down here. So default to the above in the future. I think that's pretty simple. Just say this is what we want to do from now on. And then disable extensions. This is going to open it up, or open Burp Suite up with all of the extensions disabled. Think of this like a safe mode. If you've got an extension that is causing Burp to crash every time, you can disable all of those extensions. I see that a lot with when it's loading up the user interface, and especially if you try to move Burp around while it's loading the user interface, all the extensions on the top, then go away, robocall. Then that's, it'll cause it to crash and could end up causing some problems. So that's something to think about. But anyway, we'll leave both those there. Go ahead and start Burp. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the settings here. And I'll tell you what, we'll go down to the user settings and yeah. So most important thing, first of all, let's get this to dark mode so everybody's eyes aren't hurting. That would be great. Well, I guess we can go ahead and get a couple of the things configured here. So when I first open up Burp, when I'm first getting a project configured, I always come in and set it to dark mode if it's not already set like that. I always turn on the REST API. I don't mind running it without an API key. I'm behind a NAT, but obviously, probably, especially if you're accessing this remotely, obviously don't use that. Somebody's going to be able to kick off scans, get data, etc. Okay, let's get that. What else do we want to get started first? There's not a ton that we need to do initially to get this set up. As we go through and start engaging our target, then we'll probably have a lot more. We'll definitely have a lot more that we need to get set up here. But one thing I do want to do always is the tasks up here. This there's several different things. Basically, this controls how your, well, at the top here, this controls how your scans are run. The resource pool determines how many threads are going, if there's going to be a delay in between. So I always like to come in and make one that I call low and slow. And we'll just drop this down to one concurrent request. We'll put a 350 millisecond delay, put random variations, and then I'm going to do automatic throttling for, actually for this one I'm going to do 409 because the application I'm testing, I know when their brute force protection kicks in, it returns a 429. Normally I'd select both of those, but I already know the application that I'm going to be going after for this. So, but yeah, that's probably the only thing I do when I first start Burp up. These down here are more about scheduling tasks. If you want to schedule a scan to run at a certain time, you can do that. It's typically more of a like business use case, you know, if you're using this for a DAST scanner or something like that. But yeah, I think that's okay right now. Let's go ahead and come back. And probably to start, we're going to need to get some data in here. You can see, we'll start by going through all of these tabs, the basic tabs, then we'll go into the extensions and I'll add on all the extensions that I like to use and all that. But most of these, we're not going to be able to really see what they're doing until we get some data in it. So let's come to the proxy. First thing, always, here's your intercept. This is the main part of Burp Suite. The core of Burp Suite is it is a web proxy that allows you to intercept the request when it is sent. So, you know, if I come back over here and let's bring up this, and I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and we're going to go to flowcast.app, which is the page that we're going to be looking at. And from here, oh, I do not have a proxy installed. Well, that's good. That's actually good because I want to show how to install the proxy. I forgot this was a clean install, so perfect. Okay, so I'm going to install an extension called Foxy Proxy. This is the way that I like to do the proxy in Firefox. It's just how I've been doing it for years. The important thing is that you're configuring a proxy to direct these requests locally before they're sent out to the server. We'll talk a little bit more about what exactly that means in a bit, but let's do Firefox Foxy Proxy, and here's the extension. Go ahead and add it. Yep, let's add that. Allow it to run in private windows. Always a good idea because when you're doing IDOR or access control violation testing, you're almost always going to need to have two different accounts running at the same time, which means you're going to have to use an incognito window or a private window to do that. And if you don't have this checked, then you're not going to have your request in the incognito window going through the proxy. So we got to make sure we do that. But okay, so that's got it added on. Super easy. Now we're going to come in here. Now first for the settings, I always like to pin it to the toolbar. And then all we need to do is create, that is not what we need to do at all. We need to create an option for this. So I always just call it Burp, and I try to get as close to their the new blue that they're doing, but just so that I know what that is. We're going to just stick with an HTTP proxy. The IP address is localhost, so 127.0.0.1. It is running on 8080 there. These are the default settings, and it does not come with credentials by default. All of this can be controlled in the proxy settings here. So if you want to open that up, by the way, if you can tell, this is the same window we were at before, so you can, all the settings are in the same place now. They did that about probably 6 months ago, which is good. It's a really great change from how it used to be. You used to have to go hunting all over the place for the settings. So anyway, I digress. So here, the proxy settings, if you want to make any changes to where the proxy is running, you can see here this matches what we just put in, 127.0.0.1 on port 8080. Same thing over there. But let's say, let's first of all say I get the right box. Let's say that you wanted this, you already have something running on 8080. You can maybe put this on 9999 or something else instead. I'll let you keep it on 8080 there. And then what interface you want it to do. I keep it on look back only because I don't want this to be externally facing, but it can be. You can do it in all interfaces, and you can have another virtual machine that is sending requests to this, or you can just set it to a specific external IP address you have here, and you can see it actually populates the different options that you have. but we'll keep the default options there. We'll come back up and save this. And now we have our option to select Burp. So when it's turned off and I do, let's just do arson@arson.com and password arson. If I hit login here, first of all, don't save. Not that it matters. This, that HTTP request is now being sent directly to the server, and the server, if we come down here in the network, the server is responding, and obviously I'm sure it's saying, hey, that's not an account that exists, so we can't let you log in. And there we can see that. So we have a post request that's going to the API user sign-in endpoint there, and we are returning, or they're returning a 401, which says that we are not authorized, meaning that that is not a valid username. So now we can turn on Burp. We can come back into Burp Suite itself, and let's get the settings off here because we've got everything we need. And if we turn our intercept on and we come back and reload the page, this is another thing we need to do. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and, we've got HSTS, so we're not even gonna be able to get through. Okay, perfect. This is great. I'm glad I didn't get anything prepared before this. What's happening here is now that we're running our HTTP request through the Burp proxy, the Burp Suite is replacing the certificate that we were originally sending with a Burp Suite certificate before it's being sent on to the server. The server is now saying, well, that certificate, we've got a certificate mismatch essentially. There's something wrong with the certificate you're sending. Here you see it's caused by the Portswigger Certificate Authority. It's not trusted. It's not a trusted certificate. So the server is saying, essentially giving us this warning. Now, if they just were using HTTPS, we would have an option on the bottom here to say continue anyway. I'm sure a lot of people have seen that. But Flowcast here, it's flowcast.app, they are using HSTS. And that is a stricter security protocol than HTTPS. And one of the main features of that is it will not allow you to continue on when you hit this. Now, there are some fun ways that you can get around that if you need, but we don't need to do that because obviously Burp Suite is set up for this. So all we need to do is install their certificate. So to do that, you need to make sure that you're running everything through Burp first, because you're accessing actually a web server that they're hosting themselves, and then you just do http:///burp. As simple as that. And it loads this page, and you can see on the top right-hand side there is the CA certificate. We can download that there, and we can come into our settings here in Firefox. We'll go down to privacy and security, scroll down to the bottom, and maybe not all the way to the bottom. Here we go. We go to certificates, view certificates, and we're going to hit import under the authorities, and we're going to upload that certificate that we just did. Make sure this one is checked. This one doesn't matter as much, but I'll go ahead and check it anyway. But yeah, make sure trust the CA to identify websites. That's the most important one. And click OK there. Okay, and now we have told our browser that when it basically checks that certificate, it says, okay, we trust that now. We've manually told them that we are okay with that, and now it will the browser will allow this request to be sent through to the server there. So if we log in or reload the login page, now we see that it's kind of spinning back and forth for a little bit. Now the reason for that is that we turned on our Burp Suite interceptor before. So I can sit here all day and the page is never going to load because there's a queue of web requests that are sitting in our proxy waiting for us to go in and deal with them. And that's what we see here. So let's skip through. Okay, so in the proxy, when it captures one, you can see the raw HTTP request here, right? So you've got the HTTP verb, that's going to be your get, post, put, etc. You've got the endpoint, you've got the protocol, your host header, user agent, right? All the different things. I assume most people know that, but just a quick overview for anybody that doesn't. And then under the proxy here, you have a couple different options. So you can send it forward, you can, which means it's just going to forward this to where it was originally going, which in this case was the localhost 5000 there. We can just drop this entirely, say we don't even care if that packet gets there, we don't want the packet to get there. That would typically be if you're testing like an authentication flow or something and you wanted to grab the request but then you wanted to manipulate it or you didn't want that part of the request go. Maybe if you were trying to exploit a logic vulnerability in it. This just turns the intercept on or off. So if I click this button right now, it's going to let all of the requests just go straight on through to where they were going immediately, etc. So those are the main ones there. We'll come back to the open browser later because I think that's fine for this. But let's go ahead and forward a few of these. And actually, these are all coming from the framework. Let's undo that. And here's what I'm going to do. As much as I love having the framework up here, it's going to keep sending those status messages and keep messing us up. So we'll come back over here, turn the interceptor on again, and now if I reload this, perfect. Now we have captured our request. So if you see up here, https flowcast.app/login, same thing here, right? We're sending a GET request to the login endpoint using HTTP2. Always something to see, right? You can make modifications to that if you want. You have the host header, etc. Yeah, so we can go ahead and forward that on, and we'll see that the page will actually load. Okay, so if we come back, let's actually come back here to the target. So now we've had some traffic that has actually gone through the proxy. And when traffic goes through the proxy, it begins to populate here in the target tab. This is probably one of the main tabs I would argue that you're going to use. So what you have here, you have a few different options. So the sitemap, this is probably one of the main pages that you're going to see here in Burp. This shows you all of the applications that you've identified and then the endpoints that you've identified that are going to be under them there. So next to that, we have the crawl path. We'll come and look at that in a second. Actually, we'll look at everything with the scanning and stuff here in a bit. But you also have filtering down here. So you can come in and click on this and you can filter what's shown in the sitemap. We'll be able to show this a lot more effectively here in a bit, but the first thing that I want to show is right here, show only in-scope items. So this is the most common way that most people are going to use to filter things in the sitemap. If you select this, essentially you go into the project settings, we'll do this in a second, you can set your scope in several different ways and essentially say, these are the domains, these are the applications that I'm okay with targeting. And you can have Burp Suite will drop those off of the proxy for you, or the ones that don't match that, it won't record in the proxy. You can have it do all types of logic with in-scope and out-of-scope. It's a very, very powerful tool in Burp. So usually when you first start a project in Burp, one of the first things you're going to do, you're going to figure out what you're testing, and then you're going to set a scope for that so you can just make sure that you're not getting all this noise. And as you saw as I was talking, we got this like Google Analytics and stuff, all this other stuff coming up, Google APIs. We don't want to have to deal with this, especially, let's just show, if I, click around a little bit, this page itself may not have a lot, but, even if we just go to google.com and, we search for cat videos, come over here, come back over to our sitemap, I'm guessing we're going to have, well, not too bad, but we'll wait and give it a little bit as all those little marketing things start coming up. It fills up very, very quickly. So between this and your proxy, which this is something that earlier we were looking at. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. We had the intercept over here in the proxy. Next to that is the HTTP history. So you can actually see each request that has gone through the proxy, sorts it in descending order initially. So one of the first things I do is just switch it. So the last one is on top, and we can see each one of those requests that are going through the proxy. So once again, if I'm testing, we'll see a bunch coming through here. So if I'm testing against this flowcast.app, it's going to be a pain to have all this extra stuff that's coming through if I have any other pages that are up, etc. So that's, we want to make sure that we're setting a scope for that. So let's see. Let's come in here to the proxy set. Actually, let's go back to the front because the same place we got into. So we started in the dashboard here, and you can see we're starting to get some information into it. I just want to show again, we can get to that from the same place. When we started this, we open it up, we click the setting page. We come here again, we open right up and under Tools, Proxy. You can see that we can configure that again. We're going to come down here to Project Scope, and that's where we're going to be able to set our scope. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. Really, I recommend using an advanced scope and then coming down and right here, you can actually use just a regex. Typically I just use a simple string regex because what you're trying to do here is you're trying to make sure that you don't miss any subdomains or any other domains that are associated with our target that could be valuable, but you also want to filter out the noise, right? So that's a surprisingly complex problem to solve. If I go in and just put flowcast.app, well, they're most likely going to have tons of subdomains in there, and if I'm just matching that domain, I'm going to miss all those subdomains. You can do just those subdomains, but what if it makes requests to, a flowcast.something else.io or anything that might be out there? So the way that I've always solved that problem, if you have something better, I'm always ready to learn, but I just do a simple string regex that is as generic as I can make it, and typically just try to do whatever that core domain is. So for this one, we're going to put flowcast. Again, that is matching. We'll hit OK. I'll go look what is matching in a second. But so you hit OK, and it says, OK, you have added that to the scope. Now do you want the Burp proxy to stop sending out of scope items to the history and other Burp tools? So this is what I was talking about a second ago. Now we're going to tell Burp Suite, essentially, this is the only thing that we want to look at. So let's not do a bunch of extra logging on this, and let's not do everything in the proxy. We'll just kind of ignore everything that doesn't match this simple string regex. And then we will, anything that it does, that's the ones we're going to process, we're going to populate, and et cetera. And then you have the option to, I always like to do the same thing in the future. So we'll just hit yes right there. That'll be good. And as I was saying, so the string flowcast, that is going to match right here. This is typically my strategy. I usually leave, didn't mean to do that. I usually leave the top level domain there off. Just try to do whatever the middle of the core domain is, or main domain, whatever you would call that. All right, got a few different instances of the settings up there, which we don't need. Oh yes, we got to go back to that. Okay, so we have now set our scope, but we told it to filter through the proxy, but we haven't told it to do anything here with the sitemap, which again, this is going to be our workstation. This is where we're going to spend most of our time. So you come here to the filter settings, open that up, check this box to only show in-scope items, hit apply, and we'll see that will filter out very quickly. And now we just have a few different options there. Now, this application itself is, or this program, I guess, rather, not the application, the program does not currently offer authenticated testing. I know it's going to be up early next year, but for now, we got kind of a smaller scope here. We'll still be able to pull some stuff from it. So let's look at what's going on here. So we've identified two different applications. We've got the core one that we're looking at, flowcast.app, and you can see there's an API endpoint there. I'm actually going to drop you out, and I like to have the two different requests sitting next to each other. We'll get everything organized a bit, and then we'll look at what the sitemap is. So yeah, so on the left you've got the all of the endpoint map essentially, or the what the application looks like. This is all going to be automatically populated as you send requests through Burp. If you're using their browser, which is under the proxy here, you can come down here and open a browser. It's Chromium, obviously you can see that, and then everything will be sent back through the proxy there. So that's what everything that you're seeing that is has white text, right? And you can see there's a folder, so you have the root domain here, the actual URL, and then here's the API marketing login page. You can see that matches right here. We're making a GET request to API marketing login page. Everything that has white text on it has already been requested, and we already have a response here. If it has gray text, then that is Burp automatically identifying that route or that endpoint, that URL, as it's parsing the DOM as requests are going through this. So Burp can do both passive and active scanning and crawling and all that. So by default, it's going to be doing passive scanning and passive crawling. You can think about it like if you've got a Python script and you just send, use beautiful soup and requests and you pull it down, just grab all the A's. It's much more complicated than that for Burp. They've done a much better job than that, but that's probably the simplest implementation of that. So yeah, we can see that there's some that we haven't requested. So if we wanted to do that, we can send it here. We could right click, we could copy the URL, bring it back up, and we can go directly to that page. And then as we come back, if it gives us a valid response, which it looks like that did, you can see now that it's white text as opposed to gray. We can see the response that's in there. And we've also got a little bit of information here from the passive scanning, right? Because as it grabbed that DOM, it didn't just find the possible endpoints, everything in there. It also found, not vulnerabilities is a strong word, but it had a couple scan findings that it wanted to let us know, right? So, and these are fairly common on most pages. They're telling you, right, this is informational, and this is potentially a low, but you know, I wouldn't expect to see anything massive here coming through with the passive scanning. Typically it's going to be things like this. It'll be pointers. It'll, you know, potentially point you in the right direction. Although it can sometimes get some API keys and things in there, which would be, you know, which can be good if you're doing a bug bounty test. Okay, so, and in fact, we can look a little bit at that. If we come back over here to the, actually, no, sorry. Let's spend some more time in here first, and then we'll go to the dashboard, because we've looked. So over here on this side, like I mentioned, this is the map of the application itself. In the center here, you're going to have all of the requests based on what is under where you have selected in this application map. So if I click on the URL over here, you can see that I have every possible request that's listed here, and I can cycle through them one by one. And you can see what HTTP request method was made. You can see the actual endpoint over there. Most importantly, you can see if it has a parameter or not. So a very common thing that you're going to do is you're doing bug bounty hunting. You're going to go in, you're going to target, let's say you're targeting static flowcast.com. You'll click through, you'll enumerate the application as much as possible. And then what you may do is come back over here, click on this, and sort by what has parameters. And that can give you an idea of places that you can start to attack. Now, these are obviously bad examples, and we'll find some more that'll be better in a bit. But that's a very common workflow that you're going to do. So that's the contents up here. You can see if you want to come down and narrow it down, it will just click on that there. You do the image, it's got the 2 under it. So you can get as narrow as you want to kind of sort through those. And then down here is the request and response that you have selected. So you can start to get an idea of what's going on here, right? We're sending a request to the login page, and we can see the responses coming back from the server. We can see that it's a single page application, right? Because it's not really loading much of anything in the DOM itself. We've just got a bunch of JavaScript chunk files. So, you know, almost definitely going to have a React front end, something like that, some type of a JavaScript front end. But this will show you that. You have several different options here for each of these. So, you know, if you want to see it in hex, not very common. I would say most of the time you're going to keep that in raw. Most of the time you're going to keep this over here in pretty. Render is another very valuable. So you want to actually see it in there, it will embed it. So this is probably another piece that I use very, very often. And then you have the inspector here, which you'll use more in the repeater, but it does give you some additional information here. But once we get over to repeater, that's where it has some fun functionality. I don't typically use it in here. And then the right-hand side over here is the scan results that have been found for each of these. So again, right now we're just seeing some basic passive scans, or passive scan information that's in there. But as we start running some actual scans against it, and we may potentially find some results, all of the results for each endpoint are going to be populated here. And it works the same way as the contents page, right? So if you click on the top, you're going to see all of the findings for all the pages. If there's multiple of a single finding, you can open it up, and then you can click into each one here. And then on the bottom right-hand side here, you can see this is where you have the actual information on each one of these scan findings. So this right here, it's saying there's a cacheable HTTP request, or response, sorry, rather. So HTTPS is used to send secure communication. If this is being cached, it means that whatever is being returned by the server here is being stored locally on the machine and could potentially be exfiltrated if that person has a virus or you know is you know somebody else gets on that machine. Most likely it's going to be just like a malware or something that pulls it off and automatically sends it somewhere. So you know, again, this is informational, but they did see based on the DOM that's one there. So it will show you a general advisory. It'll give you a lot of information about it. It does depend on who created the scan check. Anything coming from PortSwigger is going to be great. It's going to have a lot of information about the issue, the remediation, etc. Some of the extension scan findings, which we're going to be installing those in a bit, are not. Some of them don't have much information at all, and you kind of have to get used to them and understand what they're trying to tell you. And then some like \powered scanner that's a whole video in and of itself just to read the responses and or the scan findings and understand what it's telling you and kind of deriving information from that. But so yeah, that'll probably be another video. But that is the target sitemap here. Again, this is one of the most commonly used pieces of Burp Suite, in my opinion. This is going to be your workstation. You're going to be jumping back and forth from here all the time. And you'll certainly see me doing that moving forward. Okay, so I was going to jump over into the scan checks. Let's go ahead and do that now that we've talked about the sitemap. We'll look at the dashboard here. The dashboard is where you can see, get an idea of everything that's going on. You've got 4 different boxes on the top left-hand side. This tells you all of the tasks that are running. So remember earlier we went into those project settings tasks here, and we set the resource pool for this. This is also where you would see if any of those scheduled tasks are going to pop up, any other scans that you were running. You can see that we have the live passive crawl and live passive audit. As I mentioned, those are enabled by default. If you want to disable them, you can just go ahead and turn that off. And then as you send requests through Burp, it will not do that process as it was before. We can go ahead and open that up. You can filter some of these as well. I don't run into that a lot with bug bounty hunting. That's more of like an enterprise type of thing. If you got this hosted somewhere with automation, more like it's running like a DAS scanner. Not so much for bug bounty hunting. We have a couple buttons up here that we'll look at in a bit to actually start the scan, but over here to the right, this is a summary of all of the issues that have been found on everything that's run through here. Essentially, you can see we're not worrying about the filters that we have, so we're getting some YouTube findings, not real findings, but we're getting a couple of like passive things that are just saying something about these YouTube pages. And you can go through and sort these, right? You have a lot of you can filter them by severity, filter them by whether or not the tool believes that it's a valid finding or not. Is it in scope or not, right? So we can come in and just see what's in scope. So this is very valuable. A lot of times you'll hit in scope and then you'll come through and you'll sort by the worst issues. You can get those to float to the top. And then as you're going, you can just keep checking back at this dashboard. And if you see a couple red bars up there at the top, you can go and test those out. Down here on the right is the event log. These are major events that are happening, right? So you can see Proxy started, and then most of the time it's more of errors or alerts here. When you start scans, it'll have a lot more information. It'll let you know when it's changing the phase of the scan, etc. And we'll see that in just a bit there. And then over here, just like what we had in our target, right? This is the same type of mechanism, only it's larger and in the dashboard. This is typically where I do go through the scans. I'll probably come in here and I'll find one that looks interesting, and I'll come back over to the dashboard to actually start using it, but not really for any reason. I guess that's just how I kind of do it. But yeah, same type of thing. You can go through and, this says an email is closed. It is. support@flowcast.com. Okay. And then we can see the request here. And in the response, this might actually be a good time to show that in the scan findings, if it has something like this, if it's finding something in the response, it will automatically highlight that. And if you look down here, so this doesn't happen in other ones, but if I come over here, advisory response, it'll highlight that. It'll let you know, hey, we found some instances of this that you take a look at. And if you should take a look at, gosh, I can't talk tonight. And if you double click that, it will automatically take you to exactly where they're finding that. So same type of thing here, right? Although actually this one doesn't seem to have it. Because this one is going in the request. So you can see request or response, it will highlight what it's finding. So this here is showing, hey, we have base 64 encoded data that's going through. And as we can see, it is not a JOT, kind of looks like it's a JOT without the signing kind of. It's just like a basic data store with no integrity or anything on it. So that's going to be some type of a client-side cookie or something. Definitely not anything that I would, consider a security risk at all. But yeah, you have the same ones there. And then path to issue. This one depends. It's a newer feature in Burp Suite. It can show you more information about where you can specifically find that, or find the vulnerability, but it depends on the finding, and there's a lot of times that it won't show anything here just because of the context of the vulnerability itself. Okay, so let's go ahead. It's doing an automatic backup. That'll happen all the time, just periodically. You can hide the bar when it comes up there. So let's go ahead and start a scan on our target. We'll do just a basic scan. So I'll hit new scan up here, and it's going to open up our box. So we have the options to do a crawl and audit, or we can do just a crawl. If we do this another way, we can have an option to just do an audit, but just because we're selecting something, we can't do that now. So we'll do a crawl and audit. We'll just do a basic one here, and we'll just do the main page, right? The flowcast.app is the one that we were looking at. And I'm not going to worry about adding the login. I just want to do the root URL because we're going to tell it to crawl. There we go. We'll tell it to scan using HTTP and HTTPS, so we'll just see if we can get anything from HTTP. We can go in and set a scope just like we could before. Excuse me. So if we wanted to tell Burp, hey, you can run the scan, but either stay in these URLs, so only touch anything that's Flowcast. We could we could definitely do that. We got to make the UI make a little more sense there, but you can come in and say, well, I only want you to touch Flowcast. We'll just say that. So we're not going to scan anything that's not Flowcast. But then also we can come to excluded, and let's say if we had one that we don't want to add, sorry, that would be one in the library. Getting ahead of myself. If we had one that we didn't want to scan, so maybe we want to do everything Flowcast, but we know that there is a subdomain that's spell this wrong. I know somebody's gonna roast me in the comments, but if we know that we have a subdomain that's like experimental.flowcast, or they have anything that's out of scope, in the bug bounty program, we can go and we can set that there. You can see you can do ports, files, etc. So you have a lot of different options to configure the rules here. I'm still going to turn that off because I'm fine if it goes and scans anything outside of the scope there. And then what I clicked before, the library, so you can actually save these scope settings into a library and then you can bring them back up. So if you have a target or specific settings or anything that you're using a lot, again, that does tend to happen more in a work setting than it does with bug bounty programs, but not with, if you're doing, the same types of programs and doing it over and over again, maybe you can just bring those straight in. Okay, so we'll do that. We don't need to really worry about the detailed scope. This is a new. I actually don't know what that button does. That I think is a newer feature, so I'm not going to include that now, but I will find out and let everybody know. Okay, so scan configuration. You've got these 4 different options here, and they're pretty self-explanatory, right? How long do you want to go? How much do you want to find? For this, I'm just going to go ahead and do a lightweight scan. But you've also got the custom configurations here, and there's several that are already created. These are probably going to be the most common, and you'll see they're divided up into a few different things. So really important to know this. You've got crawl strategies, you have audit strategies that you can do, or audit configurations, and then you have these crawl and audit, these 4 here, which are associated with the preset ones right there. So obviously they can overlap with each other. They're not too complicated though. Most of the audit checks here are just deciding if you want to do less than the full amount. Although you can do audit coverage maximum or thorough. That's saying, hey, throw everything at it, as opposed to like doing some fingerprinting and trying to use some logic to figure out things that just won't work. But a lot of these audit checks are reducing it down, right? So if we just want to do a dynamic JavaScript analysis, or we just want to do B checks, they're new custom scan checks that we can do, or critical issues, right? If we're just looking for things like SQL injection and remote code execution stuff, we want to go very, very quickly. Critical issues is great if you want to go very quickly. If it's a new bug bounty program and everybody's racing to find the bugs because it just dropped, you can do that. Like I said, crawl and audit, all of those are going to be the same as what we saw before. There is one additional one, the CI/CD optimized. Could not tell you what's special about that one. That's another newer piece as well, but you could go in and actually see what the settings are if you were curious. For the crawl settings, you have just mostly about the amount of time that it's going to take to crawl. So, you have the faster, fastest as opposed to more and most complete. I tend to err on the side of the more most complete when I'm doing a scan. It does usually cap out at around 2.5 hours. And then down here at the bottom, 2 very important ones. Never stop audit, never stop crawl due to application errors. There are settings in all of these configurations that say if it gets like 2403s in a row or whatever the number is for the default setting, then it will stop the scan, or it'll pause the scan. It's very uncommon that you would want to do that for bug. I mean, obviously you don't want to be hammering something and disrupting the server, but a lot of times you're going to be scanning multiple different things, and that can just be an anomaly, or you happen to hit a piece of the application that is behind some type of restriction, and it will pause it just for that amount of time. So if you don't want it to do that, you can come in and tell it, hey, don't stop the audit, or don't stop the crawl if it happens to find that. So what I'm going to do, just because I know this application very well, I'm going to come in here and add both of those, and then I'm going to do a crawl and audit, and I'll just do a lightweight one as well. We'll do a couple of the custom ones right there. Now in application login, this is where you can come and actually set credentials if you want the scanner to actually go in and attempt to log in for you and then scan the authenticated pages. And it's quite good. It's quite intelligent in actually going in and finding the login and everything. So you can do this a few different ways. The login credentials, if you just want to add a username and password, I'll add one, even though they're not real. So what I do, arson@arson.com and then arson, and at least we'll be able to see that it will attempt to log in. It's not going to work, but that's totally fine. And then this is where you can save these to the library so you can use them again. If you have any that have already been saved, you can open this up and store them. The other thing that you can do is you can actually record a sequence, right? You can actually go in and do the login and record that using Burp's Chrome extension here. So the way that you would do that, let's hit new, and it's going to open this up, and it has a nice little thing that walks you through it, right? So you need to install the Burp Suite Navigation Recorder extension that will go into Chrome. When you're prompted, I'm going to have to get Chrome too, aren't I, for this new installation. Okay, let's do that and then we'll come back to this. Let's grab Chrome real quick. I don't need to have Kali on there, but anyway. Okay, let's just do download Chrome. It'll figure it out. I thought it'd just take me right to it. Okay, and we're installed on Kali Linux, so we'll do a deb. There we go. And we have the file right there. So we'll copy that and then sudo apt install tacf // and we'll put that back. I think apt can install this one. I know some of the newer ones are apt and some of the older ones are dpkg. So I forget, although maybe dpkg has been end of life. I'm not sure. I don't know if it likes that or not. Did it install it? Yeah, it works fine. Okay, nope, absolutely not. Okay, got this for the demo. And we need to download the Burp Suite Navigation Recorder extension. It'd be great if I could spell the word extension. Apparently Burp Suite is 2 words. Okay, we'll add this to Chrome. Add the extension there. No, we don't need to sync this up with other Google accounts or anything. Let's get that pinned to the bar as well. Okay, and easy as that. We have this. Let's go ahead and open up our settings. And yeah, you know what? We don't need to do. We can continue without incognito because this one we do not need to go to incognito for. Okay, let's go to flowcast.app like we were before. So if for whatever reason Burp Suite is not able to, let's get this properly up. If for whatever reason Burp Suite is not able to successfully log in when you just give it credentials, that means that it can't find where to log in, or it's got a more complex authentication flow. It could be several different reasons that happen, but instead you'll come in here and you'll hit start recording in that extension, and then you're going to go through the login process. Then you'll hit stop recording, and it'll give you a string of information that Burp Suite can use to recreate exactly what happened. So what it's doing is recording all those events in the DOM. What are you clicking? What's everything in the DOM? What are you typing, etc. There essentially is just a sequence of events that it will replay using a headless browser when it goes to log in. And if it's successful, it'll grab that session cookie and use that for all future requests there. So let's go ahead and do that real quick, even though, again, I don't have a proper login, but that's totally fine. I just want to show the process. So we'll hit start recording here. Don't worry about that. And it opens up a new instance, and then we'll do flowcast.app. And at arson.com, whatever the password's going to be. We hit login. Now again, if we had a real account, it would allow us to log in. What's really powerful about this too is if there's additional steps like a modal that pops up after you log in that you need to close out of or anything first, or if there's any additional steps, you could do that. So let's say we had successfully logged in, but we had to click, over here and then, over here and whatever it might be. All of those events are going to be included as well, and they are going to be repeated by the headless browser. but I think that's fine. We can go ahead and open this back up and we can hit stop recording. And oh, it's actually copied it straight to the clipboard. I don't know if it used to do that, but that's very cool. So let's come back over to our new scan and we will do demo for the label. And then we're just going to paste the script in there. And you can see what it looks like. So it tells us, okay, what are we running? What happened? Well, it went to flowcast /login. We tried to submit it. You can see here, that's how it's got the XPath, so it's identifying where that's coming from, etc. Anyway, so you would go and hit OK there, and that's going to store that. And now when it goes and runs a scan, it will actually do exactly what we just did there. It's not going to be able to log in, obviously, but it will do exactly what we did. And then resource pool. Remember, we went in there before and we configured our low and slow resource pool. So now we're going to be able to select that. So this is just slowly scanning the server in the background, hoping to poke at some information or find something while we are doing our manual testing. And if you want to go ahead and create a new resource pool here, we could just do very slow. And this only has one concurrent request, but it does one every like 3 seconds here, whatever we want to do. We could select that, but I'm just going to go ahead and use an existing one, low and slow. All right, and if we come back to the main page here, we've got everything set up and we can go ahead and hit OK, and that will begin our scan. So we come down here, we see task 3 has been added on. And yep, so it's doing a crawl and audit of flowcast.app. You can get some stuff. We got a progress bar. I will say that the time remaining is for each step, and it tends to be very dynamic, so I wouldn't use this too reliably, but it can kind of give you an idea of how long it's going to take. The number of requests is counting up here, so you can see we're starting to send requests to crawl it. This shows the number of locations that have actually been identified down here. And then it'll tell you what endpoint it's actually crawling over here. Once it gets to the audit phase, if it does start to find any issues, it will show here. It's obviously critical down to informational up there. So you can get like a basic picture of what's going on. If you want to go back and see the original settings of the scan, you can see that, just so you know it's running. You can change a few of them while it's running, specifically the resource pool, but everything else I think is locked in. Maybe we can add a few there, but anyway, definitely don't need to do that. You can also see more details if you come in here and, oh, they have updated this too. Look how nice this is. This is very cool. This looks like a new dashboard they've had where you can actually see the most serious vulnerabilities. We'll check this when it comes back and when it's actually done some more scanning. Very cool. But yeah, typically you've got all of the items that it's finding. The issues will populate here. It's going to take a little while to get there. You can see the logs as it's actually going through and sending the requests. And then you have the live crawl view, which is one of my favorite, where you can actually sit back and watch the headless browser. It's going through and crawling the application. You can see where it's going to there. Yeah. So we'll let that run for a little bit. Okay. So that's a lot of the core functionality of Burp, right? We've got a web proxy that we can use to send requests and it will intercept them. We can manipulate them and send them onto the server. We have our sitemap, that was the proxy over here. We have our sitemap where we can begin to actually start working. You see we're starting to populate some other ones. We've got some .coms. We would have to see if that's in scope. I don't believe they are. But we do have some other URLs and domains that we're picking up. And then you've got the dashboard, right, where you can actually kick off the scans. You can see how the scans are running. You can see all of the issues that you found, etc. So moving on from that, let's look at the repeater and the intruder, which are, in my opinion, two of the most commonly used tools that are in here. And I'll start with repeater, because I think repeater is really I'd say that is where I spend the vast majority of my time in Burp. The repeater does exactly what you would think it does. It repeats. It sends requests over and over again. So, we got a couple things here. So, let's come and populate this a little bit first, because I want to do some manual crawling even while my scan is crawling. Let's get rid of these here. And I've got Burp. I'm just going to start clicking through these and send these requests through. We've got some client-side validation, so we can check to see if they're doing it on the server side. You can see that that's not quite working there. Come over here to forgot password. Reset password there. We're doing the same. Oh, and this one, okay. Again, I'm not even really looking at what this is doing right now. I'm just kind of clicking around. But the goal of this is not to do that. The goal of this is to populate everything in here. Here we go. Specifically, you can see we've got the SSO login that's coming through. We've got a reset password endpoint that we can do. We've got the login itself. And let's capture that actual login because I don't think we've done that. I know we've submitted that before, but I don't think we've done it through, well, where's it going? There it is. API user sign in. I don't see that populating on the sitemap. That's interesting. May have a little bit of a delay there, but sometimes that can happen with Burp. So, but okay, so if that happens and you're not seeing anything in the sitemap, come over here to the proxy, and then that's where you can see these here. So here's the sign-in page. We'll go ahead and right-click on this. By the way, this is very, very common. Right-clicking on things in Burp, you've got a ton of different options. So let's look through these. If you wanted to just scan this endpoint specifically, or start a scan from that, you can hit scan. See, it opens up the same thing that we have. We can go through and start a scan just on this one endpoint as opposed to doing the whole application. We can also do just a passive or active scan. So I could just go ahead and hit this, do an active scan, and it will automatically do several different checks on that. So we'll let that run a little bit because this one is going at very low resources, so I'm comfortable letting them both run at the same time. Passive scan is going to do the same type of thing. Now you see we've got an arrow over here on the scan. So we can come and open the scan launcher like we did before, but actually you can go to different endpoints over here. Let's go to this marketing page. I can right click, go to scan, and I can add it to the same scan to the end of it. So if I hit add to task now and come back over to the dashboard, this active scan here is going to go, see, it's already shifted over to the marketing login page here. So we can continue to just manually add more scans to that if we want. And then we can send it to Intruder and Repeater. So let's look at that. And let's specifically look at Repeater because I can tell you several times, this is very, very common with Burp, right? You're going to find a request that you want to do some more testing on. You see this. It doesn't make any sense to come back over and, if I wanted to do this testing with the proxy, let's say, okay, I want to test this. Well, let's go. We'll turn the interceptor on. I'll hit login. That will go and capture it. I can make some changes, and then I can turn it off, and that would send it. And that is one request that I just sent as part of that test. If I'm trying to test, several different strings and really understand what's going on here, that's going to take forever. It's going to be a terrible, terrible experience. So the repeater allows us to just send this to the repeater, and you can see, so you right click, send a repeater, and now you see this is highlighted orange. When we click on this, this has been sent as a tab in our repeater, and we can just hit send over and over and over again. Uh-oh, we got locked. Oh, man. We'll have to find a new target then. Okay, let's pause this and pause this because we're not going to find anything fun there. And we will have to look at another page, which is totally fine, totally fine. So let's do that. Let's just go to another program there. I know we were looking at another one. Hacker1.com. Where is the directory? I think I can just do /programs. Doesn't that take me there? Maybe? No? Oh, it does. Okay, I remember this now. It takes you there, but you can't have the /. No, it doesn't. I think it used to. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to do that. We're going to do that because I don't feel like logging in. Okay, and we'll do front, right? Because I uploaded a few from there as well. Let's come down and just grab one of the specific domains. We'll just do help.front.com. Why not? Okay, that's going to be our new target. So let's go ahead and get our new target added to the scope here. So we'll come back to target, scope settings, and now we'll just hit add. And, I'm probably just going to focus mostly on help.front.com. Let's not worry about any other subdomains or anything. We don't need to do any more additional scanning. We've already showed that. Let's just get this added here. All right. And now we open this up and we reload help.front.com. We should see that populate here. And we do. And now you can see our flowcast.com and flowcast.app and all that is kind of getting in the way because we've been blocked there. We'll come back to that in a bit. But in the meantime, let's come back to our scope settings as well. And I'm just going to uncheck this. And that's going to tell Burp, hey, I don't want that to be in scope right now, but obviously I'll come back and check it when I do want it. So I'm just going to clean up everything that we're doing. We can open this up and now we can see we've got a bit of information there. So let's just do a little bit of basic enumeration, right? We're just going to fill in a couple different forms there. We will hit login. That looks like a redirect over to the app. Just clicking around, and all of these are going again through our Burp proxy, and they're going to be recorded in that sitemap there. So when we come back, we should see a few different options for what we can target. And we do, although we're not getting a ton, but this is, we'll just look at this search. This looks like a good thing. So again, we're going to go back and look at the repeater. So this would be a good use case for the repeater, right? We found an endpoint that has a get parameter. This is a search query, so we know that this is most likely going into some type of a database and making a query. We don't know what type of database it is, but we can potentially do an injection there. This query may be reflected in the DOM, and we can actually see that right now. We can come over, select this, we can copy it and just paste it. Remember how we had the highlights earlier where the scan was identifying strings? You can do that yourself as well. So you can come in and submit that and see if anything's being reflected in the DOM. And there we can see it's not for this search. So, we're not going to be looking for reflected cross-site scripting there. But this type of a request is the perfect use case for the repeater. So let's go ahead and right click. And once again, we're going to come down to send a repeater. You can hit that. We can also, as you saw there, do a control R. So you could just do control R and it will send that. And once again, we already had one there. We can just, actually we'll save that for a bit because we may end up not getting locked out after some time. Even, there you go, we're already opened up. So we can come back and do some testing on that as well. But I don't want to hammer their login page too much, so we'll come to this one. But again, you can see that's really the functionality of it. We've got these different tabs there. You can rename them. So if you double click on it here, it'll select it, and I want this to be Flowcast login, just so I know what it is. And then this one over here, front HQ help page. And this is an extra one here, so we can just close that off. So now we have the ability to test, kind of test the waters a little bit or get an idea of what's going on with this endpoint. So I hit send here. I can see the responses coming through just like I tested before. If we wanted to see if this was being reflected, let's go ahead and send that. I typically use my handle arson as a way to check and see. Once again, we don't see that being reflected. If we wanted to do injection testing, let's say we thought that this was potentially going to a SQL database, so we might do a double quote at the end of it and see how it handles that. And, we're going to be looking at variations in the response. We actually have, it looks like, a bit of a variation in the response. Looks like we're not getting any response at all. So yeah, this is where we can start to get an idea of what's going on. Why is it not giving us a response all of a sudden? Is it because they have a web application firewall or some type of a security check on the perimeter that drops any requests that look potentially malicious? Let's hope that we're not just banned or something here, but that could be what we're seeing there. Or is sending this double quote causing something on the server side to break, and that's why we're seeing that functionality? We don't know, but that's what we're trying to figure out. We're not doing a lot of real fuzzing yet, but we're trying to understand better what's going on here. We can do some basic testing. For the login page, since we're available here, we can modify these as well, right? So same type of thing. Oh, I'm locked again. Good grief. Okay, so send in one or two, we get locked again. Anyway, if we wanted to make some changes to the headers, let's say for this, if we wanted to try and bypass this control, right? This is a brute force protection, which means that there is something on the most likely in the load balancer of the web application firewall, potentially even programmatically in the application, that's checking to see how many requests are being sent from me. But the question is, how do they identify me? Are they identifying it from a IP address, from a specific header, etc.? So if they're doing a remote IP address, a common thing for the repeater here is I might do x forwarded for, and then localhost 127.0.0.1, and then does that allow us to bypass that? Obviously, it doesn't here, so this is not vulnerable. But if we were to go from this to getting it unauthorized, then we could have potentially overwritten our IP address there. Several different ways that you can do that, but Yeah. So once again, with the testing here, this is typically, repeater's great to do injection testing. You can see everything else coming out. It's fairly basic in its core functionality, right? It's just sending the request over and over again, but very, very powerful in the context of web application security testing. So before we move on, I want to make sure that we're touching on some important different settings that they have here. You can come and click on this settings button and specifically update content length. So for anybody that doesn't know, this content length header that's being sent if you have a post request. So let's right click on this. Oh, this is another great thing to show, very common. We're doing a GET request here right now. What if we want to do a post request or a put request or anything else? We want to send it with a body in there. We can right click on this and we can do change request method, and it will automatically convert it to a post. You can see it converted this to a typical form, but we can do application JSON as well if we wanted, and then we can come convert this into JSON, you know, and it'd be query arson, and we could test to see if it accepts JSON. It doesn't accept a post request, so it doesn't like that at all. But anyway, back to content length. So, and let's go to the form as well because that's a better demonstration. The content length here is telling the server how much data is included within this this request here. So you can see it's 10 bytes, right? Each letter is going to essentially be 1 byte, or each ASCII character is going to be 1 byte. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is included right there. Again, this is, as long as this setting is checked, I can change this to whatever I want. And Burp Suite is automatically going to reset this. Now, if I were to come in and not tell it to update this and then do 99999, the server's not going to be happy because it's waiting for something else to come. It doesn't really know what's going on there. And that is your basic testing for HTTP request smuggling. So if you are doing any manual testing for HTTP request smuggling, you have to make sure that you're not updating the content length if it is a TECL. Specifically for that's one example. There's other ones, but, and honestly, I could have gotten those backwards. I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head. So correct me in the comments if I did not get that correctly, or get that correct. But now I'm losing my train of thought. But yeah, that's just I want to make sure I call that out. Obviously, there's a lot of these settings are pretty self-explanatory and they are helpful. But this update content length, I know people that have failed the Burp Suite certification because they didn't know about this setting. So I wanted to make sure that I included it when we were talking about the repeater here. Follow redirections is another one. It starts defaults to never. I usually set this to always, just to see, you know. I will have to find an example for one that doesn't, but if it's not set and I were to send this and it's a redirect, this is just going to capture the 302 and tell you where it's going. If you don't want to do that, if you're testing something where you just want it to go through every time, sorry for bumping the mic, then you can come through and set it to always, and that will always send it through, and then obviously in scope or out of scope. So I think that's probably the most important parts of the settings there. You can see you have a couple additional filter settings down here that you can do. That's dealing with the search bar and the automatic rolling to it. This auto scroll match when the text changes, I do really like that. You can set that so if there is a match, and you would actually highlight it over here because it's going to be in the response. But let's say arson was being reflected, or whatever we were setting was reflecting. If you hit send now, because we have this setting enabled, it will automatically take you down to wherever that's being highlighted. And actually, we should be able to show that. Let's just find something that we know is going to be there. So right click, copy on this. And if we do this here, you can see it's automatically, once if I hit send, it will automatically take you down and center that there. And then finally, we have this great inspector tool. You can see it's also in some other places. It's over here. I use it very rarely in other contexts, but very, very, very useful in the repeater. This allows you to make some modifications to this. Do we have anything with the JSON web token or maybe something here that's encoded? That'll work. Okay, let's, the UI is not wanting to play with me here, which I don't love, but that's okay. I think I'll probably close it out and open it back up. That's why it's the different UI there. That's okay. Anyway, so whatever you highlight in here in the request to response, you can see this inspector is going to help you manipulate it. So, and the most, probably what I use the most here is what pops up immediately. So you can see there's some URL encoding that's in here, the %2f that translates to this backslash there. It will automatically encode it there. And then if you wanted to change this, but keep that whatever the encoding convention is. It's much more common with JSON web tokens and base64 and things like that, but you can certainly go and status here. You could apply those changes and it will automatically set it there. If this is a base64 encoded, then in fact, let's see if we can do that. Let's just try taking a string here, and I'm going to right click on this. This would be a good chance to show the decoder as well, which is an encoding and decoding tool. Even though it sounds like it only decodes, it does both. So yeah, you send the string here. You can see it's just been populated in here. You can either do it with the hex as well, or for this case, we can just do the text. Smart decode will just try to figure out anything that's there. It's very good at picking up URL decoding, so I typically hit that. It'll grab it and it'll show you what's actually being decoded there. Otherwise, you just have decode, encode, or generate a hash, right? Simple, straightforward, kind of a condensed version of CyberChef that's put in here, but really helpful when you need it. So let's just do what are we doing? A base64 encode. And then I'm going to take this back and let's put it in our cookie. So we'll just pretend we have a base64 cookie in here. Oh, that's not correct at all, is it? Okay. Unfortunately, you cannot right click and copy. You have to just use the keyboard settings, and there are times when that doesn't want to play nice with you, but there we go, able to get the sec down. Okay, so now we can see here it's got the base64, automatically decodes it, then it does the URL. So if we wanted to add something else in here, we wanted to add the arson string as well, I can add that and hit apply changes, and over here you see it's actually still base64 encoded. So really phenomenal for testing different like roles or anything that are embedded in data. If you want to test to see whether or not a JSON web token is being validated, things like that, you can. That's a really great tool to do it. I'm going to come over here where it's the dark UI, so it's a little easier to read. But you do have several other options, so you can come down and see what are the actual requests. So dig into more information. But I would say the most common tool that I use is the inspector up here. Okay, I think that's everything that I want to include for, one other thing, bottom right-hand side down here. You see we have the number of bytes in the request and the number of milliseconds that it took to return. So the bytes is obviously looking for big variations in it. If I were to send, something with this in a different payload, and this came back and said, there's only 5,000 bytes instead of 95,000 bytes, or instead of 90,000 bytes, then I would assume that something was going on there. I would assume that adding this single quote has caused the server to send a very different response, because we're getting 85,000 less bytes than we got before. Same context with, or same principle with the milliseconds down here, right? And that's probably most commonly with if you're doing like a SQL injection, and then that plus sleep 10. Obviously this is not going to work. It's not the right syntax, anything. But if we were to send this, and now all of a sudden this milliseconds goes to 10,051 or something around there, there's this huge variation, then that can be another sign that the payload that you're sending is having an impact. But moving on from that, obviously this is limited in the fuzzing capacity because we're only sending one request at a time. This is much more of a manual process. But what if we want to send a large number of requests? We want to do some proper fuzzing. That is what we can use the intruder for. So a lot of times once you've come through and you use, at least this is what I'll do, I'll use repeater to find a specific endpoint or anything that I want to fuzz, and then from there, I would send it to the repeater. So let's right click over here. Before we did the repeater, Control I. Now we can do intruder, Control I. That's gonna, it's the same sound. Control R, sorry, for the repeater, and then Control I for the intruder right there. Okay, there we go. So sending it to intruder, right? We've still got the HTTP request here, but now we've got these different options. The first thing we have to do is we have to pick the position where we are going to insert the payload. So this is a fuzzing tool. For anybody that's not familiar with fuzzing, fuzzing is sending a ton of different requests in an application with a bunch of junk data that it's not expecting, or I shouldn't say junk data because a lot of times it's very targeted and specific types of data, but data that it doesn't think it's going to expect, and we're looking for variations or anomalies in the responses that can tell us that we're having some type of an effect on the back end. So typically you're going to be checking, this would be the first step for checking for injection vulnerabilities, although this can be used for all types of different things. But typically you find an injection point here that's going to be the query get parameter. Then we want to run through and send this a bunch of things that it's not expecting. And then again, like I was talking about before, if it sends much less information back, if it takes much more time to get back or much less time, any major variations in those responses, we're going to think we're causing some type of a different action on the server side. That's the first step in an exploit. What a vulnerability really is an attacker has the ability to manipulate an application to cause some type of behavior that the developers, that the owner of that application did not intend, right? So that's what we're looking for here. Once we've found that, then the question is, what is the break, right? Can we weaponize that break? Can we manipulate that unexpected behavior in a way that can be beneficial to us as the attacker? And typically that would be exfiltrating sensitive data, taking ownership of another user data. I mean, ultimately what you're trying to do is get the data, right? Ultimately an attacker is trying to get the data in the database that's in the application. Whether they're trying to get access, whether it's an account takeover or anything else, the security team, the application security team, their primary job is to protect that data. Anyway, the reason I wanted to go on that left turn and call that out is it's very important when you're considering business impact, when you're submitting reports. If you can, when you're framing the impact of your vulnerability, you want to always try to tie it back to the customer data. Or if you can tie it back to, financial loss or anything. Reputation is typically the least impact. And it can be very hard to sell a bounty to a company if it's just a damage on the reputation, unless it's very, very significant. But anyway, okay, back to fuzzing. So first step here with the intruder, we need to basically tell the intruder where we want it to fuzz. We want to send this request several times very, very quickly, but we're going to be changing this request slightly every time given certain payloads and words that we give it. So where are we going to change? What are we going to change? We're going to go ahead and add a payload here, and you can see they use this little legal symbol because it typically doesn't show up anywhere else, so it's a good unique character there. And that will identify the payload. So now it's been highlighted and wrapped. And we'll be able to swap out this arson string with several different payloads, whatever we're sending through. But we don't have to stop there. We can do as many as we want. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add one there in the query. And then I'm actually going to add another one here in the subdomain of the host header, just so we have three to play around on. And the reason I wanted to show the host header is this bar section up here. When you're fuzzing the host header, which this is very common if you're looking for like hidden subdomains, if you are, if you're testing like a Windows IIS or ISS server, whatever they're called. I'm sorry, I haven't worked with Windows in a while, but they do a lot of what's called vhosting, which is where they have multiple different subdomains that will route to the backend. I see that a lot on Windows servers, .NET applications and things. So you may want to fuzz this host header to see if you can find any of those, or maybe you're just fuzzing with some malicious characters to see if this is being used somewhere else, it's being reflected. Burp has this section here where it will essentially has the target, which is the obviously the URL, which is going to be resolved to an IP address. And then there's a checkbox over here that says, do you want to update the host header to match the target? So this is checked by default. I've seen a lot of researchers that will go in and try and fuzz the host header and they won't uncheck this. They'll think they're not seeing anything, but actually Burp on the back end is just replacing all your payloads with the host header afterwards. So all you're doing is sending the same request over and over and over again. So if you do want to fuzz the host header, like I'm going to do here, make sure, leave the target the way it is, but then you're going to uncheck that so it won't do it. When you try and run the scan, it's going to give you a warning. You're just going to click through it. But okay, so we've got three different payloads there. that's really everything that we need to do on this page. You can see if you want to add more, you want to clear them. It's got this auto button that I don't really use, or refresh or anything if it gets jumbled, but typically this is a fairly simple process. The last thing you've got to select is the type. And great, they've got descriptions on it, because I don't think those used to be there, but you can see there's 4 different types of scans. So sniper is the most simple. Sniper is just going to run through and do all of the payloads on all the payloads on one position, then all of the payloads on the next position, then all of the payloads on the final position. So when it's testing this arson value, when it's replacing this arson value with the value in the payloads here that we're going to set, this will still be query, this will still say help. Nothing else is going to change there. So it'll do it one by one. Battering ram, you can see it puts them all in all. So on this one, if we were to select battering ram, now if our payload is, let's say a null byte, right? So a %00, now it's going to be %00 equals %00 and %00 is the host. It's going to hit it on every single one there. And the last 2 that we have here, which I honestly don't use as much, but we have pitchfork and cluster bomb. Pitchfork is going to do each one individually, right? So we can set a payload for this query. We can set a payload for this position here, and then we can set a separate payload for this one here. But it's not going to go through all of them like it did before. It's just going to hit it each one in its specific position. And then finally, cluster bomb. Cluster bomb is battering ram, but it also does the additional combination. So this is going to go through and do every possible permutation and combination of the 3 in each different position. I am 85% sure I got each of those right. There's definitely some documentation. Again, please let me know if I'm getting any one of those wrong. 100% confident on these first 2, about 85% confident on those second 2, just because I don't use them as much, but that's okay. Like I said, we're always learning, right? Okay, so once you have the position set, the next thing to do is come over to the payloads, and I want to just do a sniper to make it easy, because this video is going on for quite a bit of time. Do our little automatic update there. Great. Okay, so let's do this. I actually want to, instead of doing this, let's do a pitchfork so we can show the different ones. Because when I come over here in the payload sets, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to select which payload set. So because we have the pitchfork, we've got 1, 2, and 3, which correlates to our 1, 2, and 3 over there. What am I looking at here? There we go. I don't know how I looked at that last one. Go away. Okay, that's correct. So yeah, that'll correlate going from left to right for query, arson, and help right there. And then we can pick the type of payload. So you've got all different type of options in here. Simple list is typically the most common. That's where you're going to pull something from a word list here. And that is a lot of the time going to be sec list. Let's go ahead and get that. GitHub sec list. So this is a fairly new machine. I don't have a lot of stuff downloaded on it, but it gives me the opportunity to show how I would get all this. This is, in my opinion, the unequivocal security word list there that we have. Let's go back and let's just do a git clone. We'll put it right there in the root directory. It's going to take a little while. There are a lot of different word lists that are built in there. But this is a must-have for anybody that's doing any type of security testing. We're going to do a lot in this discovery and fuzzing down there, which is very typical for the web. And you can see, it's taking a little while. So, while that's running, I think some of the word lists that I do like to use often, I come in here to fuzzing, and I love to do, where's the URI? You have like double URI, hex, and different encodings, basically sending every possible encoded character to it. You're getting null bytes, you're getting all these unexpected characters that aren't typically associated with ASCII characters. And then just, again, looking for variations in the responses is a very common way that you'll do fuzzing there. And this is hopefully done in just a second. Otherwise, I may speed the video up. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so now that we've downloaded that, we can come back here. So we've got our payload set, at least for the first one. We want to set a simple list. So now let's go ahead and bring in a list of payloads. Now you can just copy and paste anything if you want, but I'm going to hit load here, and I will go to our new sec list. And for this, let's see, this is position 1. This is going to be a parameter. So let's come into the payloads and let's load. Let's go to discovery, and we will go to web content, and let's actually do Burp Suite's param miner. We're going to try some other parameters to potentially see if you know, another parameter would still give us some functionality. Maybe they have some hidden get parameters or anything that are behind there that we can potentially affect. So we'll grab that for the first one. You can see that that's going to populate it. And then these are the individual payloads that are going to go through. Now this is really the core of what you need to do for Intruder. So we could absolutely come up and hit start attack here, and it would go through and run through each of these. Well, we would have to fill out each payload. So we could do this. We could go sniper. So there's just one. Now we have our simple list. We could hit start. It'd be totally fine. Everything else here that I'm going to be showing from here on out is going to be extra, but that's the basic scanning or the basic fuzzing functionality. Let's go back to our pitchfork. Let's select a couple others. So for 1, we'll do that. Payload 2, over here, we have just a generic value. I don't really know what could possibly be in there. So that's where I think I'm going to do our URL encoding. You know, let's see. Let's just throw a bunch of random characters at it and see. Actually, you know what? Even better than that. Let's not do a bunch of random characters. Let's come back over here to the fuzzing, and there's actually a word list here called a big list of naughty strings, and we'll go and send that. And that has just a whole bunch of different stuff that we will see how it responds. And finally, we have this host header here. And in the host header, we're kind of just trying to see what could possibly be back there. Typically, we'd be scanning, like I said, for subdomains. So what I would probably do there, let's come back up to our discovery, web content, and I'm actually just going to use a raft word list. I'm a big fan of these raft word lists. They're essentially just several different options of long list of common words and strings. And I'm just going to choose a small raft words. There's words, there's files, there's extensions, there's directories for each one. So you've got the small, you've got the medium and the large. I use these all the time, especially when testing on JavaScript applications. Fuzzing for endpoints using these with JavaScript applications tends to be, I have a lot of success with that for some reason. I don't know what that pattern means, but we'll go ahead and add that there. And one other thing I want to show, if you have any type of fuzzing that you want to do with numbers, IDOR specifically, let's say you're trying to find some hidden files or hidden objects or anything with an IDOR vulnerability, indirect object reference, and you know, we'll just kind of create something for this. So let's do and you know, ID equals 1 right there. Let's just say that was part of it, even though it's not. So we'll add that as another position. Now we're going to have to, you know, this one is going to have to go to 4 is going to be our simple list there with our big list of naughty strings. Got to go back to fuzzing. And now we'll come back over to 3 and we're going to set this one to numbers. And now we can come down and set, do you want them sequential or random numbers? Where are we starting? We'll start from 0. We'll go to 100. We'll count by 1. You got all types of different things that you can do there. So hopefully that gives you several different options or shows you kind of some different options that you can do, but fairly simple. Trying to think if there's any other really call out. Collaborator payloads is probably another one if we want to, which we haven't looked at that yet. We'll look at that in just a second, but that essentially tests for like server-side request forgery and things like that. Is essentially a webhook there. We're going to keep this as a simple list. And okay, so we come back, we can select our resource pool again. So I will go back to low and slow. But obviously, again, this is meant to be fuzzing, typically goes very fast. So it's common to just leave it on the normal one there. Actually, I'll just leave it there for the heck of it to show what it looks like. And then there's several different settings that you can do. So we've got settings in the payload as well. Payload processing, this is something that I could potentially say. This is where you can just manipulate the payload. What I do a lot here, if we're fuzzing like a JSON web token or something that's base64 encoded, you know, you could say, well, let's do a base64 decode first. These work like firewall rules, so it just goes from top to bottom. So we'll decode it, and then maybe we'll do a match and replace, and anywhere that you see user, I want you to replace that with admin, and then we could potentially come over here and we're going to encode it again as base64. That's one example. You know, another one If we're getting errors whenever we have these dash characters, some type of a character that's in the payload. Actually, I'll tell you one that's specifically very common with that is this here. Let's go ahead and add a payload processing rule. These hash characters can sometimes cause some problems there. So let's just do a match and replace. And let's just say if it is any hash, we're going to replace it with the word arson. Why not? It's just one example. But obviously that's, you know, pretty self-explanatory, the different rules there. And then your payload encoding, this is going to be set by default. We're going to automatically do URL encoding on these characters here. But if for whatever reason you don't want to do that, you can delete that out of this list, or you can just uncheck this and it won't be doing that at all. I want to see if there's anything in settings. Save this, you know, to the project file. That's probably a good idea. You can see you can control the errors. This grep matching is probably the most common setting that I would use in here. Basically, if you want to flag any results. So if you're expecting something, let's say we were fuzzing for a SQL injection. We may want to say, you know, so we would post or paste a, you know, exception into here, and then it would potentially flag that if we would find it. You can extract value out of it and everything too. So basically just some things to grep. Oh, and redirections. I would say I always use always in testing for most use cases. This is very, very helpful. So if you're running through a test, you're getting all 302s and everything there, it's going to stop on the original one. The default is never. Make sure you come in here and do always. Probably select process cookies and redirections as well. This is usually how I would run most interceptor scans. Yeah, that's about it. Let's come over here to positions. We can hit start attack. And there's the warning that I was talking about before, so that it doesn't match the intended host. That's totally fine. We're going to ignore that, and it will begin the scan. And it's going to go through and run several different payloads there, and we can go through and see if it found anything. So once the scan is done, and I intentionally did one that was just going to take a couple seconds there, you can see we have a bunch of different information from here. So what was the request number? What was the payloads that were used? What was the status code in the response? Was there an error in there? Any redirections? What was the length? So we can and they've added all these additional things in here, which is really great. Oh, or maybe these are just the grep flags that we had in there. They've been doing a lot of updates on this too. This did not used to be there, but it's very, very cool. You can add and remove any of the columns here. And one that I always do, always add response received and response completed. So if we see any big variations, the amount of time it takes to send the response, we could potentially have we have some type of unexpected behavior happening there that could potentially be exploitable. So from here we can start to sort through and try to find the anomalies, find the patterns, right? We only have one 200 response here, and that is with 0 payloads. We did not get a single 200 response without that. You can see the link there too. We had some bad requests that we sent. We got a significant number of 500 response codes here. You can see all these were coming back very, very quickly. Length looks about the same. So as I'm scrolling down, I'm just looking for anomalies in any of these. And I really don't see much of anything. If I did see one, let's say this one was an anomaly or we wanted to go further testing, I'd probably come back, right click, and again, we'd send a repeater. And it'd take us right back here and we go back where we started. But in this one, I don't really see much of anything. You can come back and look at all the settings, make some modifications. You can pause the attack. You can run it again. You can save the attack. But that's about it. It is a fuzzer with a GUI that you can use. Really the same functionality as FFUF. Anything else? There is Turbo Intruder, which is a extension that you can download. It's definitely a video for another day, but that is much more robust, allows you to do Python code in with this. Very, very powerful. If you're going to use Burp Suite, got to learn Turbo Intruder. Very, very phenomenal tool. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and discard this, and I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about with Intruder. We've talked about Repeater. Collaborator, very quickly, like I mentioned, Collaborator, this is a webhook that Portswigger actually sets up on their end to capture request, and then it will let you know when requests are sent to that. So you can come up here, you can hit don't show this again, or you can just hit get started, and that will go ahead and turn your Collaborator on. Copy to clipboard, that will begin the polling, which means it's going to be polling that webhook to see if anybody has requested that. And it's also added the unique domain to your clipboard. So if I come up here and paste it, you can see you're typically going to have a unique string .oastify.com here. You can add anything to this that you want. You can do get parameters. That's how you can exfiltrate data. You can do subdomains to exfiltrate data, etc. But ultimately, this is just waiting for any type of DNS, LDAP, HTTP request, anything like that. And if it gets it, you can see there, if we come down and we're polling, we will see that we got a couple DNS queries that were coming through, and then we got those HTTP requests. And we can actually see when we click on them, okay, what IP was it received from? When was it received, right? Because if we're doing this, really what we're testing is server-side request forgery or some type of remote code execution. Blind cross-site scripting is another thing that we could be. Anything where we're causing a victim or a device to make an HTTP request, a DNS request, or some type of a request that it did not intend to make. And this is notifying us that this has happened. So the IP address is really important because we need to make sure that it's not us making this request. That's very, very common when people are doing testing, especially on cross-site scripting or blind cross-site scripting. They will fire the payload themselves, and then they'll think they've got a valid vulnerability. You go in and find that actually, no, it's just that's your own IP address, and you just basically ran a fetch against it or something too. And we would see that this is the IP address that I'm at behind my VPN. So, you know, if you want to target that one, you're more than welcome to. It's not going to be as valuable as you might have thought. But that's the basic functionality of it. So this, you know, collaborator, you can copy this. Typically, you wouldn't put it in the browser. Typically, you would put it so in the repeater. If we thought that, we thought that maybe this could potentially do a server-side request forgery, or even over here, you know, the host header is very common that maybe the host header could do some type of a DNS query as part of that. So we can send that, and that would be called an external resource interaction there. Yeah, I think that's really all I need to talk about with Collaborator. It's a fairly simple tool to use, incredibly complex to build and maintain. So major props to Portswigger and their team for doing such a great job on that, and incredibly powerful to use. So let's go ahead and I guess look at just the final ones that we have here. Sequencer allows you to compare several different unique tokens to see what the entropy basically is. So if you have a ton of different session tokens or API keys or anything, you can see if there's a lot of entropy there. Maybe it's a possibility that you could brute force that or extrapolate some information from that. Very rare that I use that for bug bounties. We did see the decoder before. I do use this sometimes, but most of the time I mentioned earlier, I use CyberChef. It'd be great if I could spell it right, but Google's at my back. Yeah, definitely recommend for just general encoding and decoding and everything. CyberChef is phenomenal. Comparer just compares two different requests down to the byte, right? So if we want to see, all right, let's go to the repeater. Typically it's used with the repeater, right? So let's send this here, and then we want to, let's get one that doesn't have all that in there. Let's send this. Get rid of this so we don't have that. We'll send this to the comparer first. We have one request, and then maybe we come and we do something completely different here. How about this? Let's do just that, and then we send that. And I right click and send both of those to the comparer. We come back. You can see we got the top one selected there, the bottom one selected there, and then we can either compare the words, which will bring this up and show the different variations in those two, and the responses there, or we can come down and compare the bytes, and then we're going to get down and see a much more granular variation there. Logger. This is a logger. Shows a lot of basic information there. Depends on what you're actually logging. You can go in and set the settings. I would typically recommend using an extension called Logger++, although it looks like they're doing a lot of additions to their logger as well. So that may not be my choice anymore. Organizer, brand new. I have no idea what this is, or it's not brand new and I've just never used it, but I don't think I've ever seen it on there. And I know a blog post that I saw was like October 20th of this year. So I need to get spun up on it. It looks like it's a way to organize HTTP messages. So I have to include this in a future video, but always excited to see when they're doing new stuff. Okay, now I'm going to do an entire video on extensions, so I don't want to dig too much into that. I know that was another request that I got on the Discord server here, but This is where we can install extensions. I guess one thing I can do, let's close out of that. Let's just show, if you come over here into the B App Store, this is where you can see a lot of the extensions that are being used. I usually sort them by popularity and then just go through, I'm just going to go through ones that I use, and I can show how to install them and do a lot more later. The one thing that I am going to show how to install is this ActiveScan++. This just adds additional scans onto that ActiveScan check. But I see you've got to download Jython and get it uploaded into Burp Suite here, and I know that sometimes it can be a little tricky with Burp's UI, so I just want to demonstrate that real quick. Now, I think they've made it much easier. You can click on this now, and that's awesome. It takes you right to it. I usually do the Jython standalone, so I'll just click on that, it'll download it. And then we come back, you go to the extension settings here, and then you're going to be choosing the Python environment, and you want to do the location of the Jython standalone jar file. Now, I'm just going to leave it in the downloads folder for the sake of this demonstration, but obviously I would typically move it over into the Burp Suite folder and have it done properly. But okay, so we can set that. Now, the reason I wanted to show this, like I said, it can be a little quirky with the UI, is, once that's there, you've got what you need. But if I close this and come back, I still can't hit install. It still only gives me the option to download this. So what you have to do, and even if I go like dashboard and then go back to extensions, I think it's still not going to let me. What you have to do is click off of ActiveScan and click back on, and now we have the option to install, and we can go in there and do that. So that's been installed. You see, come back here to install. It's now on there. You can remove it. You can unload it right there where it's still installed, but it's just not being used, and we can reload it just like that, and got some basic information down there for it. Okay, so ones that I would absolutely install, Param Miner, got to have that. It's going to help you find hidden parameters. Autorize, great for bypassing 403s. Actually, I think I got a request to do a video entirely on that, so that's something I may look at in the future. Retire.js, actually there's an extension to do that. I get this sometimes, but it finds outdated NPM packages. Turbo Intruder, gotta have Turbo Intruder. Like I said, I'll do a whole video on that. HTTP Request Smuggler, gotta have that. I'm realizing how silly this is now as I'm doing it. I'm gonna do a whole other video and go through it. Sorted by popularity, go through here. I posted something in the Discord as well, which is like a link to a GitHub page that has a ton of additional information on this. You can look through them, but sort by popularity, look at the rating, look at what other people are using. The ones at the top here are going to be, most commonly used. And then here's that Logger++ that I was talking about, that I'll usually install this. And that gives us the option, should usually pop up here normally. I don't see it doing it today, so maybe they modified something. Anyway, it's just a more powerful logger. But yeah, and I think the last thing I wanted to touch on here is this Learn tab at the end, because obviously I've tried to put out a bunch of information here tonight. You can see there's still a ton more that's out there. So if this was interesting and helpful, hopefully it was, then you can use these links to continue to learn here. So they do have a really great tutorial that'll come and really talk through probably a lot of what I was talking through here. You can see the different tools, but there's a lot of other really great information, right? It has information on different Burp extensions, how to use them, etc. So and bcheck specifically, which is something I definitely recommend you check out. Again, I got to do a video on that as well. The Web Security Academy. If you're not familiar with this, you do have to create an account, but it's a free account. They have a ton of different labs, learning paths, and things that you can do. Let's just come to the all labs down here. I cannot recommend this enough. They've really done a phenomenal job with it. Not just in building all of these labs and things out, showing very specific things. And this is so specific to bug bounty hunting too. That's why I love it. The Hack the Box and Try Hack Me and Pen Tester Lab and all these other things, they're phenomenal platforms. But there's a lot of additional information that's kind of to the left of bug bounty programs. And these are very specific to that. Most of these can be tied to a specific test that you can do in a web application, and almost something that can usually be automated as part of your methodology. So I wanted to make sure I called those out. Everything else on here, right? Support Center, they've got some video tutorials on top and a Twitter. All great stuff. But yeah. All right. Well, hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, hop into the Discord. Again, link is in the description, or leave a comment here and I'll be happy to answer it. Otherwise, I'm going to have other videos coming out. We're going to look at extensions. We're going to look at all types of different things here in Burp. Bchecks is another video that I can do because this is, it's a monster of an application, but again, it is incredibly, incredibly powerful and a necessity for bug bounty hunting and web application security. So, yeah, have a great night. I will see everybody when I get back from my trip in early December. Cheers.